welcome to a very special edition of the FSM Prep Rally. I'm Joe Arrigo, and joining me today is the head coach of the high school national champion Bishop Gorman Gaels, Brent Browner.
Thank you. That sounds good. It sounds good.
It's got a good ring
It's got
to
a
it,
good
right?
ring to it. It does have a good ring to it.
All right, so first of all, congratulations again, man. We've seen the process start from the beginning, 2019, when that ended, and then getting to now. So looking back, how special is this team? How special is this national championship?
It's really special. Obviously, these guys are the first group of guys that I had when I took over as head coach. To kind of see these guys mature, come full circle, and really come into their own. I think, we've had a lot of good teams here, and this is, another one of those teams everybody asks, which team is the best? It's just kind of hard to tell, but what I got from this team was just such a sense of brotherhood, and, they just got it, right? They just did everything the right way. Everything you could, ask of them, they just did, and a little bit more self-sufficient than most teams. They were older. I think they seemed like a wise team, if you can say it like that, but they just were good to go on so many levels. So just that part alone, made my job enjoyable. Obviously, too, putting together a good coaching staff is a big part of that, too. When we first took over, having Craig Campfield, at that time, Chris Brown was at DC, too, with us. And then transitioning through the years and still, building upon coaches and having good guys come in, like Coach Cosgrove, is our strength coach now in our DC, too. So, and then the plethora of guys that are behind the scenes that help, make this program run. Like, I think everybody kind of looks at me, but it's a lot of guys that are putting a lot of extra time in, and it wouldn't happen without those guys either. So, just definitely appreciate to the time and the time away from their families those guys have put in to make this happen.
Man, so it's been a couple weeks. Is it more exciting or is there more relief?
It still isn't, like till today, first having Fox Sports come over and give us that national championship plaque. And then, as you go through this part of it, we're still not playing. So there's that, like staying relevant and things like that. It's been a long time since we played. So, that's kind of one of those things. But I think the body of work the guys put in is heir apparent. I think, it would go down. We've had some amazing offenses here, and I think that one's got to be arguably the best, and that's crazy to say, right?
Yeah.
Defensively, we're young, but they toughed it out. They did some great stuff with a lot of young players, so it's a really bright future for that defense now. As offense is a little bit older, these guys were young, and now it might flip a little bit, but
Which you don't mind, you're a defensive coach anyway.
Yeah, Coach Camp always tells me that, but I always make sure I take care of both sides, and that. It's good to have that synergy between those two groups. The competition that they both have against each other during practice, or just even anything we do together, is important. I think it's what they've built on and become special in.
So you bring up the past with the offense being arguably the best in school history. I think it is. I know Ant has felt the same way. Has any former players or alumni reached out to you to congratulate you on winning a natty? It's been a while.
It hasn't. It's not. It's just now kind of getting official. But former players come back all the time. We talk all the time. We're blessed and lucky to have those guys. Whether it's just come back, hey coach, can I come work out, or it's an open door, right? Those guys come back and talk to the guys. We've had Rome came back this summer. We've had Ronnie come back and talk to the guys. Caillou came back and talked to him. Jeffrey came back. The foundation of what it means to be here is stuck with those guys. They love it. They took something good from this place, and they still too want to give back in whatever way. And sometimes it's just about encouraging guys to keep themselves grounded. It's hard.
Yeah. That offense. I've said this. I've told you this privately. I've said it to him. If I had to start a team, one of my first hires would be Craig Campfield. I think by far and away he's the best offensive coordinator in high school football. To have that type of personality, the offensive genius working with you, and to be honest, he's got 3 rings before, and they haven't won a natty without him.
Yeah.
How cool is it to have him, and how special is it to have him here in the role that he plays with you?
It's invaluable, right? Like, you have another guy that's definitely a head coach, so you have multiple head coaches on the same team, which helps. It's just fun to work with him because it's like a mad scientist. You can't really look at that other room over there because there's a lot of stuff on the board you can't see. But, we talk about time and sacrifice and just loving your job, like coming in and just working every day, but always coming up with something new. If you even just watch what we did on offense, like there's some times where like every single game there's something new. Like every single game is something new.
That
Every
Miami
single
Central game, man, when you went 75 yards on 5 plays in less than a minute, I mean, it's like 28 seconds. Like, that's unheard of against a team that has arguably the best front four in all of high school football.
Yeah, and it goes through a lot of practice. I mean, you know, there's some times where we played in games where we in some of these games we worked on stuff in May. You know, then it kind of gets cycled out, and then all of a sudden he calls a play. It's like, all right, let's see how this goes. You know, like they haven't played it, practiced it, nothing like that. And to have a group of guys be able to execute it, you know, one, it starts with their discipline. Two, it starts with their communication. And three, it just talks, you know, it also teaches their dedication of what they're doing, right? You know, like they're serious about what they do. They put the time in, and to memorize that many plays, and, you know, uppers running like 80 plays on a high school football team is not normal. You know, we tracked that in the summer. Like, man, we ran 78 individual plays at Boise. Like different plays. Like, you know, it was kind of a cool thing to have, but to have them execute it, to have them be able to do it is, you know, it's one thing running a bunch of plays. Being able to do it and execute it are two different things. So, you know, that's what I think he brings the best part of is it's fun to be on offense because there's always something new, right? You never know whose name's going to get called, you know, and to have the player, you know, and Micah that was able to just read the defense, give the ball to who's supposed to get the ball, you know, and have a bunch of guys. It's very hard in an offense like this to have that many guys that are really, really good and always want the ball. We don't know who's going to get the ball at any
And they
play.
remain so unselfish.
Yeah, that was very unique. I can tell you that. That's not a normal thing that happens either.
So I want to go back to the journey at the beginning. 2019, Liberty High School beats Bishop Gorman in the state semifinals. After the game, a tweet goes out that you're getting the job. So I know it's off a firestorm of things, and because Kenny Sanchez he was still the head coach at the time. But then eventually you took it over. And then you had to deal with the pandemic. I mean, first year as head coach, and it was kind of crazy. Like, going into that pandemic year, your first year, like, starting from when you knew you had the job through that year before you actually played a game in 2019, what was that like?
You know, it was a lot. I mean, I didn't know I was getting a job. Everybody assumed to know it, but, you know, definitely interviewed like everybody else, so that was kind of cool. You know, I think it was difficult in the sense that you're ready to go. You know you just lost. So all the kids are ready to go play. You know, they're all ready to go revenge. There's a lot of stuff in their mind for that. And then all of a sudden you got to stop. You know, you get started, you're doing all this stuff, and then you just immediately stop. And then, we made a conscious decision, even myself, like, hey, like the first reason why we got back was just for the kids' mental health, right? Like, this is what these kids love to do, right? Everybody has different extracurricular activities they use for school, right? And that's what keeps them involved in school, I think, more than anything, is those kind of activities, right? Not everybody's school. We know we got to do it, but those activities are what keep them branded into the school and doing that stuff. So this is their activity, and, you know, not having it, it's detrimental. You know, like when guys retire from the NFL, you get done playing for the first time, like it's you go through depression. So these guys were, I know when I got done playing, I went through depression. You know, like you're just having all these guys around, all that stuff. So I can imagine what they were going through at such a young age. So the first thing was just getting those guys back, working out, togetherness, and just fighting that stigmatism as you had to be away from each other. Second was, how are we going to do this thing? Like, how are we going to get these guys engaged? What are the things? And just going through multiple Zoom calls. Lonzo Carter had a great Zoom call that I used to always go on and just kind of learn from college coaches about what they were doing. And every time, I mean, football is really simple. Like, I'm not inventing the wheel. Like, I'm going to find out something that's good, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to tweak it, and make it ours. And that's kind of what I did from all those Zoom calls. Just took a little piece from what everybody was doing. Lucky enough to have a good, group of college coaches I could call on and see what they were doing. So we were implementing programs. We were doing stuff. We were on Zoom calls all the time. We made sure we checked in. We're having push-up challenges on Zoom calls. We were doing all kind of stuff that you could do when you just had to sit in the house. And I think that kept them bonded. And I think it made us better because we learned how to coach in a different way. And I think taking that, once you could actually get back in front of kids, you still had so many more options. And I think a lot of coaches, if you did it right, you became a better coach because you had to communicate way more. Before you could have somebody, older guy, just show them what to do. Now you're on Zoom, you're trying to teach them from the Zoom, and you got to really make sure your stuff is on point so you can teach them. And it really made, I think, coaches and myself better as communicators to the process of what we needed. So that was great. And then we got back, and we were one of the first people to actually come back and start working out. So Coach Brown at the time put together a whole plan through CDC protocols and da-da-da. We taped at the weight room. We made lines where you could only walk in this line. You couldn't go anywhere else up. But it got those guys back together. It got them lifting, and you could just see the hard work that they were putting in every single day, right? And this is probably their only thing they could do too. So we just got really, really strong. We were already pretty good, but we got really, really strong.
And got really, really healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody came back and they were good, and then you started learning different parts of that, and then we just kind of learned and went through the process with those guys at that time, and then when we first finally got out there in the field, it's weird because we always had to split them up, and then we split up by offense and defense. So the first time that we actually was legal that everybody let you go outside and be together, you had a bunch of alphas that are bitten at the chomp and who's best and who's this and who's that, and 10 seconds later, you couldn't have a whistle at that time either. So first practice, I remember we're just walking through trying to just do something offense defense, and within 3 plays, it's a full on melee, and there's no whistle, so you can't really stop them either. They're just they're ready to play football, that's what they've been waiting to do. So that's when I knew, the time that we had spent until we got to that moment, I knew it was developed right. We did the right things. We had them still locked in. They were still focused. They were still ready to go. Because the moment they got any close to a kind of a football thing, it just went crazy. And it's bad and good, right? Man, that team's ready to go. And it's bad because you can't get them stopped because you have no whistle. So those are 2 things. But I think that's how we came out of it, and that's when I kind of knew that we were on the right path. Just that one interaction for 3 plays in T-shirts, it was just supposed to be a walkthrough. It's the first time you could actually put 2 kids in front of each other, right? And they were ready to
go. So from that point on, and obviously this is your second stint at Gorman because you were here previously. Were you ready for everything the job has in store and everything?
I don't think anybody. You think of head coach, and that wasn't my ultimate goal. I just liked when I got done playing arena ball. I just wanted to help kids. I just wanted to see if I could help somebody get better at football. Arena ball was one of the things where you had offensive and defensive guys, and I was a defensive guy, and you needed an offensive guy to learn how to play defense, otherwise you would lose. So I was always teaching the offensive guy, hey, this is what I need you to do for defense, teaching that part. So that's kind of how I got started. And when I took the job, I just wanted to just help 1 or 2 kids. Didn't really see it, just didn't really think of it that it wasn't I wasn't thinking of it like that. Wasn't thinking of it like that. So even when the first kind of came up about being head coach, I was okay, this is something different, and then you can't be prepared for it. There's too many things, too much stuff going on, and you don't see all the stuff behind the scenes. You just see. Sometimes I think everybody just sees the good. There's a lot of other stuff that you have to navigate and make sure that everything's taken care of, and you kind of lose the part of why. I feel like I kind of lose part of why you got into it. Right? I got into just help kids in a smaller setting. Right now I'm helping the whole thing, but you do miss that interaction with just a small group. Not for nothing, it's great to be a defensive back coach. That's your group, that's your guys. Boom, boom. It's a tight knit group, and you get to do that whole part, and that's kind of what you fall in love with, right? And then you kind of move off, and you're helping everybody, but then sometimes you're just helping. There's 185 kids, so you kind of lose that small piece of it. So there's still jealous of my guys that just get to do little pieces, but I know, just hoping to be a good steward of the program. It's not mine forever, right? So just making sure that I just kind of get it to going to where it should be going until, either it's time to be done.
So for the first time ever, going into next year, you're not going to have Micah Alejado as your quarterback. Sure. And this is a guy that coming in, Micah had all the expectations in the world. There was nicknames for him coming out the Vegas Strong program. He was that guy. And he's more than lived up to the expectations. Last year, we talked about the Gatorade Player of the Year going into the season. I thought it should have been another player, and you explained why it should have been Mike. And it's hard to dispute that.
Right.
He should win it again this year on a national level. I think he's the best high school quarterback in America. I think you would agree with that.
100%.
How special is it to coach him?
It is. I would say, everybody's like, oh, when did you know? I knew when we were at practice, and the guys know who's supposed to be. The kids know who's supposed to be starting and who's not. So if you're in a program and you're having the rumblings, it's because the kids know who's supposed to be out there. So it was the first time that he was out there just throwing the ball, and he didn't start in the beginning. He was running with the threes, you know, kind of doing that stuff. And the first time he actually got with the ones, I could just hear in the huddle, like, okay, now we're ready to go. Now, you know, like, there's older guys, like, you're a freshman, like, they're not supposed to be excited that you're doing that, right? And that was kind of that first part, and that's the first one I knew. And then, but then I always hold reservation with every position as far as, you know, are you physical? Can you tackle? If it's defense, can you tackle? It doesn't matter how fast you are. If you can't tackle, you can play defense. Same thing with offense. If you can't get hit in the mouth and get back up and go play, you're not going to make it anyways, right? Because somebody could just take you out of the, you know, a couple hits and you just fold. So we're in practice, not supposed to happen in on a D lineman kind of get pushed in the back, and he's throwing the ball and he just gets rocked. I mean, to the point it was like it wasn't even supposed to be happening right there. And it's just, you know, something that happens at practice. And he got back up. You know, I kind of looked at him. You know, nobody made a big deal of it. He's a freshman, so you know. Now he doesn't get hit like that. But then he got hit. Nobody said anything. He's kind of look at him like, you get up or not. He got up. You know, kind of dust himself off a little bit, and then proceeded to keep throwing the rocks. I was like, okay, because it wasn't, you know, it was a big hit. And it wasn't, you know, in a time when you're not expecting to get hit either. You know, in the game, you know you're going to get hit and all this stuff. So it could, you know, and that's where I kind of held judgment probably the longest. So I never, you know, we were in COVID, you never really seen, yeah, you're doing great in 7-on-7. This is great. You know, nobody's hit you. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what's going to happen. So until that moment, that's when I kind of knew. I was like, okay, yeah, he's going to be the dude.
I seen this year he made a huge jump in being vocal. He was really, I mean, he was more of a quiet leader the first 2 years he was here. I mean, his sophomore and junior year. But this year he took a major, I think, step in his leadership with it. I mean, how vocal he is. In particular, in the Miami Central game. I mean, after you took the lead, he was very vocal with the defense about getting that stop. And you can see how bad he wanted it, because we'll get into it in a minute, but going back to previous years and how close a couple games were, that Gorman didn't come out on the right side.
Yeah.
And that's a testament to you in Campfield. You know, you guys really empower your players to be vocal and to be leaders. And I think that's one of the, pillars of, you know, being a part of Gorman.
No, I think, you know, if you look at why he stepped up now, I think there's been powerful guys. It's crazy because I like to say it's kind of getting automated now, where the kids are teaching the other kids. You know, like the kids are doing the job so that everybody's falling in line where they got to fall in line, right? And last year's a bunch of really, really powerful leaders on that team. So he didn't have to have that role. So watching him step into that role, like you said, was important for his development too. You know, was he a star last year? Yeah, but you had, Zachariah, you had Tretch, you had Jemai, you had EA, you had EP, you had so many just dynamic guys that were probably more vocal and leadership-wise that wasn't the thing that he needed. Now this year he needed it because he wasn't going to be the guy that they needed to all follow. So I think by him learning from those other guys and now stepping into doing it the right way. We always talk about, you know, leading the right way, right? Leading's not always about tearing somebody down because they mess up. It's about how do you build that person up? How do you get what you're searching for out of them in the right way, right? Just going around and yelling and cussing at a kid because they don't do what you needed to do. That's not motivating. Is that going to motivate you? The answer is no.
Right.
How do you motivate? And we always that's the January through basically May talks with those older guys. Like, how do you do this? This is how you get your guys to play for you. This is what you're doing. So those kind of talks, I think, help because there's going to be a point where we're going to need it, and you're going to have to make sure that these guys play for you, not you yell, scream, say bad words, and to think it's just going to magically happen, right? So I think those kind of development things that we do for those guys in that off-season period is why they're really so good and they are able to be effective leaders to each other. One
of the guys that develop, I don't know if he ever will stop developing, is Elijah Lofton. Yeah. Again, a guy, I think he's top tight end in the country. He's just different, and the comparisons coming in were Reverend Jordan. Mm-hmm. I think he exceeded those comparisons. Just off, you can use him as a running back, tight end. You line him up out wide. You can play some DN. And he returned the punt. You know, this is a guy that's 245 pounds. You know, or ish around.
Yeah.
And that's a freak.
Yeah, he's a different kid. I got to give credit to Coach Campfield. Like, he's the one that saw him as a Brevin because he coached Brevin for so long. And, you know, Elijah was just a receiver. People don't realize he was just playing receiver, and then it's tough to go from just forever he only played outside receiver. It took a lot of development. working with Coach Kea with O-line, putting your hand in the ground, learn. I mean, the first time he lined up as tight end, his stance was all messed up. He'd never done it. So it took a lot of development in that part. To his credit, you got to be open to changing when you don't know that you need it, right? You've always been a receiver, you've always been this, you've always had a mental thought about what you're going to do. And, he was able to open himself. It wasn't easy, but he opened himself to hey, this is a possibility and stuff like that. And then, to see where it's taken him is amazing. Comparison to Brevin. Brevin always considered himself a running back that just caught the ball. We just never put him at running back. He would always say, man, Coach, I'm a running back when I get the ball. So the comparison is so crazy. I mean, it's amazing to have two kids in a program that are so alike, that can both just are so dynamic too. It's just, it's a blessing. And then, a lot of teams don't use tight end. And the way we use him is, and I think it was a good plan to use him in so many different ways. So when you're getting recruited and things like that, you can see him in different modes, and different coaches will come in and say, yeah, I see him as this, I see him as that. A lot of them didn't see him as just a pure tight end, the 6'5", just everyday tight end guy. But the way that if you watch, they've used tight ends to move around a lot more, or the H-backs or the slip-backs, he fits the mold perfect for what they did. And I thought the offense, showed what he was able to do those things. So, and he did it well. I mean, the return punt, it was a, hey, Coach, the senior night, I'm going to, you said I could do punt return. I was like, oh, my God. All right. And then he touches it, and he almost fumbles. Oh, my God, put him back there, and he just fumbles the ball. And then he picks it up, and then he, almost returns it. I was like, all right, well, that kid's special. It's not easy. Not easy. The whole thing, I was like, oh, my goodness. But, that's, a test, just a lot of hard work that kid put in to switch a position. And it's a physical position. You play receiver your whole life. You're not used to getting down there with the big boys. And then you got to get down with the big boys. You got to double team. You got to climb up. You got to do all this stuff. You're taking online. I mean, yeah, it's a testament to his hard work of why he's where he's at.
So I kind of want to transition to this season, and I want to start at last year's game in Reno where you beat Minogue. Before the game, Trish, TQ, and I were getting ready on the sideline. Well, they were getting ready. I was standing there kind of getting the vibe, and the officials all gathered, and the head official came over. I've told you this. Mm-hmm. And they basically said, Gorman's going to trash talk. Gorman's going to taunt. They're going to blow him out. If you even think there's a flag, just throw it. We're going to try to slow him down. We're going to show them who's boss and pull the leash back. And you guys got flagged for ungodly penalties in that game. I mean, it was almost like the Miami-Texas game in the Cotton Bowl back in the 90s. But half those penalties weren't even penalties for you. And that's something that you had to deal with. You guys have to deal with. And then realignment happens. And it just, the NIAA, they're trying to do what's best, but they really kind of screwed the better teams of Southern Nevada. I want to start by asking, is your goal to win state, or is your goal at Gorman to win a national championship?
It's a lot of questions right there. Unpack some of those things. So, I think to the referee point, I think I've been here long enough, and I think you get what you get what you give, or you get what you give, right? And if you're yelling and screaming at refs, there's a perception. I would tell you this: after we played Corona Centennial, Matt Logan had texted me, and it was probably one of the best texts ever, right? He was like, you guys have a great team, and the same thing, but he's like, your kids didn't come over and trash talk to us. They didn't get on our sideline, do none of that stuff. We play a lot of teams that come over and do that part. And I think, again, you get what you give. The perception and then what you get is two totally different things, right? So we're just kind of hopefully that, that was one of the big things when I took over is I want to try to change the perception of what's going on and what it is, right? So I think they're doing that. I think it's an emotional, it's a passionate game. So there is some stuff that you just can't kind of get, but it's not a overtly, we're better than you, da-da-da. The kids don't have that kind of attitude anyway, and I don't have that attitude, so there's nowhere for them to draw that from. So I think they're trying to set that. I think one of the biggest things I think we've done is try to set that differently. And I'm hoping that we can do that every single year and we can get that accomplished, because that's not what, I'm about. That's not what the program's about. It's what it shouldn't be about. When you play us, yeah, it's a physical game. Yeah, is it going to be a tough game? Yes. We're going to give everything we got? Yes. But it's not, it shouldn't be, there's no reason to talk trash. You got shoulder pads on. You got a helmet. I tell them you got shoulder pads, helmet on. If you want to be big and bad, do it with that. Your mouth, shut it. So I think that's a piece that, again, I've seen get better, which is amazing, right? Because, again, I understand why there's that perception. So that's one of the pieces. Two, you know, the realignment was tough. Obviously, losing games, out-of-state games, is not great for us or for even some of the other schools that want to play more games. I mean, I know everybody in the state doesn't want to do that either, so there's got to be a happy medium for everybody to kind of to participate to the levels that they're trying to do. Yes, if we're here and we're in a league, well, yeah, we're trying to win the league. Doesn't matter what league it is or anything like that. That's a big goal. I think to say that we don't want to win a state championship would to diminish Nevada itself, and that's not what it is. Yes, we want to win a state championship, right? And that's a big part of what we do every single time we go out there and play. Like, Nevada is important, you know? Winning a national championship is on, I mean, if you start the season, like, everybody's kind of, you know, if you're playing out-of-state games, that's what you're doing it for, right? So everybody, from Liberty to everybody, like, we're all doing the same thing. It doesn't matter what state you're in. If you're playing out-of-state games, as you're doing. If you're just going to play just in your state, then you're just worried about a state championship game. So I think that part takes care of itself without saying it. And I think winning a national championship is important to the state. You know, everybody's, you know, yeah, we win a national championship, Bishop Gorman is successful. We win a national championship, Nevada's successful. Like, every kid in Nevada is successful after that moment. Like, that validates everybody that plays in this state. Again, we said it multiple times. Liberty's going out playing Bosco. They're going to play these other schools. They're trying to win a national championship, or you wouldn't be doing that. It validates them that the only schools they ever lost to all year was number 1 and number 3 or whatever ranked team. You know, like, it validates what they're doing at the same time, and it validates every kid that's in the state that plays against us, against them. And I think the kids all need that. They need the validation because, trust me, other states are excited. You know, super excited. If their state is a national championship, you think if Texas won a national championship, they wouldn't be just jumping up and down.
We wouldn't hear the end of it.
Never. You never hear the end of it. California, you think they're not excited when, you know, it doesn't matter if you don't like Bosco or you don't like Mater Dei during the season, all that stuff. But the fact that they're winning national championships, I can tell you everybody's happy. Everybody's happy there. I mean, I'm not expecting anybody in the state to like us when we play them. Heck no, I don't expect that at all. I know we root for every team that plays outside the state. It is a state versus state thing. It's, you know, when we're outside the state, we're outside the state. You know, it's battle born. Like, you're supposed to be together. You know, when we're in the state, yeah, you're definitely not supposed to like us. You're supposed to want us to lose and all that stuff too. Like, those are things that have to happen that are good for the sport. But, you know, winning a national championship is important to the school, but it's also really, really important to the state and the validation for everybody that's here that plays in the state.
So that leads me to ask this, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this. Going forward, realignment after next season. I mean, they realign this year, but then they go back to the drawing board. Is the plan for Gorman to stay in the NIAA as it currently stands, to maybe put something together and work around and come up with a better plan to kind of push football forward in the state? Or there's talk of the Trinity League down in California, Gorman going to that. You wanted to talk about that a little bit?
So I'm on board with working. I think obviously what happened this year was not a work together. I think, you know, we found the best possible situation for where we were at. I think Donnie did the best he could do with what we had to work with. And I think the inclusiveness of more things helped out in a way, but it wasn't perfect for everything, all right? There's little tweaks that even if could be made for next year, probably would make it, you know, a little bit better as far as what we do before we can really go back and talk about what could make the state better, not just Bishop Gorman, but the state and more things happen better. Like, having a bye week, like, we don't really want to take a bye week. We don't want to take a week before the playoffs. Like, I don't think anybody wants to miss a game or do those kind of things. Like, having a lot of bye weeks isn't always great for us, right? If we were to have a situation where maybe we had less teams in the league, maybe one less team in the league, so then when you get to the playoffs, all 6 just play each other and just run it down, then you don't have any bye weeks, everybody's getting play and things like that. You know, maybe that's a quick solution, a little bit of a fix and tweaks that we could probably make. But, you know, the first thing is to, you know, again, we're Nevada. We want to stay here. We want to work together. I think working together is probably the biggest piece, too, is we just need to kind of, you know, get over the old way and like work together so that everybody can figure out, how do you make this system work for everybody? Because it can't just work for us and not work for somebody else. And it can't work for everybody else and just not work for us either. I think it needs to be done. I think it can be done. It's just we all got to kind of get in the room and just kind of be honest and be real about what's going to work. And, I've heard some things that are the last thing that for what we want to do is to deter other kids to come out for football, right? Like, oh, we have to play Gorman. Like, we don't need to play those teams. But we're forcing that upon them when they're not doing it. If you're not playing out-of-state games, like maybe, just figuring a way we could get something else worked out so that, again, the sport grows, everything in this state gets better. It's more of a competitive too, where it's not just everybody's getting a trophy type thing. But, I think it is important that everybody has a chance to make it. And without that thought of making it, then, whatever we have to do to get that part done, I think is kind of up to just us to get in a room and figure it out.
So it sounds to me you want to get in a room at some point with everybody, get it figured out, but you didn't take the Trinity League off the table.
I don't.
I know it's above your pay grade, but still, if I didn't ask it though, people are gonna say, "Oh, Joe's talking to his boy and he's not asking the tough question."
But like this, there's teams from California that are in the NIAA. Things like that happen, right? Truckee can't travel, all that stuff. They're in our thing. I mean, it's never an impossibility. Is it very hard? Yeah, I think that it's logistic nightmare as far as the travel. Do they want us? Who says they even want us?
Well, that's like a team like Servite. Is Servite going to be able to afford to take their whole team up here? I mean, because it's not just Mater Dei and it's not just Bosco.
Right.
There are other teams that may not have the resources that they have.
Right. And who said they want us? That's the other thing too. Like nobody from CIF or Trinity League said, "Hey, we want you to come in." I've never got invited, so I always hear that question, but I've never got an invite to even start the conversation. So it's a good question though.
Wow. So and the thing that frustrated me about realignment this year, and you brought up everybody getting a trophy. I said it after Minogue beat Faith Lutheran. They got the 5A2 participation championship trophy. But the teams in the North don't want to play the teams in the South. It's not just you. They don't want to play Liberty. They didn't want to play Arborview and DP. I mean, they'll take on some of the lower level teams. And Faith Lutheran, to their credit, they're not the 8th best team in our state. But that's who, if you look at it, the top 7 teams of 5A1 were supposed to be the top teams.
Yeah.
They beat the 8th best team. And albeit Faith was in that game and they had a very good chance to win. I think a couple things here and there. But do you feel that the schools up north are ducking the schools down south?
I think we need to have the state championship, right? So you got to play, we got to play more. I mean, the hard thing is how it's set up now is that, we're playing 6 teams and playing 6 of them in the playoffs. Like, that's not a state championship. There's so many other teams. We used to do it, there were so many other games, so many other different teams to play and things like that. So, those pieces, I think that's another big piece of what needs to kind of get fixed, to call it a state championship and make sure we're kind of doing those things for that.
Speaking of state championships, you beat Liberty, and you've made the case for Liberty being a national team.
Yeah.
I think Coach Morocco does a fantastic job. Late in that game, though, you guys scored a late touchdown. What was the purpose behind that? Because I know what it is, but for the record, there was a reason behind it.
You got to play the game for what it's worth, right? You have guys that want to get in, guys that practice all the time. Things like that are happening. Some of these guys, this is their last high school football game ever. And I've been on both sides of it. I mean, I coached at Faith. When Paolo was scoring 77 on everybody, you just basically keep playing the game for what it's worth, right? Like, as a player, I've played it. I've always kind of heard the thing, well, the kids feel bad. I played games that we got blown out. I never felt bad. You're just, as a kid, you're just playing the game.
Right.
At that point, you're not looking at the score. I think the outside people are looking at the score. You're just playing the game for what it's worth. And that's just kind of what we're just trying to do, is play the game for what it's worth, get guys in so they can play in the game. Like, they want to play. The kids want to play. Nobody's stopping playing. It'd be different if, when it was that point, that whoever we're playing against just goes to victory formation, just starts taking a knee, then okay, well then we stop playing the game. Then I guess we'll stop playing the game. There's never going to be it's always going to be that. There's never going to be a right, wrong with it. Everybody has their own opinions in it. I can tell you, being on both sides of it. Again, I haven't always been at Bishop Gorman. Even when I was at Bishop Gorman, we've got our butt kicked too. We played against teams that give us business. They keep scoring. I'd rather, we played against, I think it was Coronado. Boom. They're onside kicking. It's like minute and a half left. It's like 50-something to 0. They're onside kicking. It's like, all right, they're playing the game. Cool. Nobody was like, oh, I can't believe that. Hey, cool. We're going to continue just to play the game. They're going to play it. We're going to play it. There's only so much time to play in it. There's only so many reps you're going to get, only so many downs you're going to get. Let the kids just play the game for what it's worth. Nobody wants to go out there for their if they only get a couple minutes to go take a knee.
Yeah.
On both sides. Hey, I just got in, coach got me in, and then these guys take a knee. So the moment that I would get to play against, the number 1 ranked team, I got taken a knee. How fun. Nobody's going to benefit that. It's just kind of is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. You just kind of, you just gotta let the kids play, and it's not comfortable. It's not easy. It's I know there's unwritten rules of you should just some guys just, hey, you should take a knee. Well, then we should have done it at 35-0 and just stop the game.
Yeah.
Right. There's that too. We should just.
Well, you had style points too.
Yeah.
Because people that aren't in town, they see scores and they try to base everything off a score.
Yeah, and I think that's another piece with the national championship run and that kind of stuff, that it does play into a role. You do have to keep scoring. You do have to keep playing. You can't just not score points. It's all point differential. If you look at how this team played against this team, sometimes all you can judge 2 teams by and who's better, and that's, I can tell you the teams, Bosco didn't just stop scoring when they were up by 20. They didn't say, hey, we're just not going to try to score again. We're up 20 or so, we're just going to quit and then we're not taking a knee. So, that's just, it's always going to be it. It's always going to be there. I've been on both sides of it, and just kind of do what I do.
You guys had 18 days off between games. How brutal was that?
It's, I don't think the time off is brutal. It's just you're losing games. You're losing opportunities for kids to play, right? You just, you're losing, I remember the playoffs was a thing. You played off. I didn't realize it until we got to the playoffs. I was like, we're going to have 2 total games? You're 1 game and you're in the state, 1 game state championship. That was one of those things, I said, I think giving a team a bye week in there, you don't really need it. You need a game. You want to play a game. That's the whole point that's the whole point of doing all this work, is to play in games, not to just, cruise to something oh, we want to play this game, we want to play that game, we play this team, we want to play that team. So they had done it before. Last year we took 4 weeks and we played Chaminade. That was brutal. That was super brutal. This time, and then a lot of the guys had done that, so they were just conditioned for it. They just knew what practice was going to be like. I think coaches did a good job with that. Developing what we're going to do each week, making sure it's not too much, making sure we're not getting anybody hurt, and then, people do get hurt and things like that. So it's kind of that.
All right, so let's get to the big money questions now.
All right.
This scheduling games. Now, I'm going to go right to it. We were at a 7-on-7 event a couple years ago. Bosco player walks by. Somebody, I'm not going to say who it is, wasn't anybody in this room, said, tell your coach to play Gorman. And his response was, my coach don't want that smoke. So I'm going to ask you straight up, me to you, is Bosco ducking you?
So I think it's hard to schedule games for everybody, right? Everybody has a trouble scheduling games. And you got to kind of just put it out there for who you want to play in those pieces. All we can do is ask, right? I can ask if you want to play. You might already have a full schedule.
Have you asked?
Yes, I've asked. And, you got to kind of pick who you want to play. You can pick who you want to play. It's not hey, we're just going to schedule whoever. If you have an idea of you want to play somebody else for whatever reason, somebody's higher ranked than us, then yeah. I would imagine you would pick them over us, right? That would be, that's just, if you're playing for a national championship, that's what you do. Hey, you guys, I definitely love having a chance to play you guys. I kind of need to play somebody a little bit better, or somebody that's going to be more preseason ranked. So those are decisions that those guys got to make on their own. All I can do is ask to play games, and some say yes, some don't.
So you have asked?
Yeah.
More than one time?
I think we've asked a couple times. But, and then that's sometimes it just doesn't work for schedules. So
you're being nice.
That's what it is.
You're being nice. All right, so this year you're supposed to play Mater Dei.
Right.
Realignment kind of screwed that up.
Yeah.
but you tried, correct me if I'm wrong, to get that game on the schedule.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the biggest. Those are ones those are big ones, right? Those are ones you have on the thing. So it kind of starts from 2 years ago, right? So 2 years ago, Rolo, we called Mater Dei to play. That's how we got the game in the first place. Rolo is just Rolo, yeah, anywhere, anytime. So we scheduled the game for the 9:15-ish area, right? So something happens, and Rolo calls me up and says, hey, we've got a scheduling problem, we need to switch games. Or can we switch to this other date, which is 8:25, or one of the second games. Mind you, we already had a game that we were scheduling from, a big partner. Not gonna say who the big partner was, like does a lot of stuff for us. We're like in the final stages of scheduling that game, and I had to go to them and just be like, hey, I can't play in your game. No disrespect, like this is gonna be the #1 team in the country. Like this is what we're trying to do ultimately. So, can we get out of the game and can we move and can we just like come play? Can we do your game next year? We definitely want to do the game. It's just that's the only week they could play. They can't play another week. Okay, cool. Luckily enough, he was understanding. They were cool with it. So that's how that game got so early. It wasn't really supposed to be that early. So that's just how that game kind of went. Same thing happens to us this year, just kind of vice versa, right? So you're looking at the NIAA decides to take that week, which we've had for 10 years. We're playing a game. We've been out a game on that game for 10 years, so nobody would have thought, like, when you're making that so far in advance, because you're making these games, like, now. So you don't really know any of those stuff right now. So schedule the game, think we're good. Then on, like, March, in the middle of March, we lose that game, the date to play on that game. First go to the association, like, hey, can anybody move that date? And it's not that anybody wasn't going to, but it's just not their job. Like their job is to do what's best for their team, not what's best for my team. So if they've already got some stuff lined up for their out-of-state games, why should they move their game? Why should they move that league game now that's never been a league game before so I can go play Mater Dei, right? So there was some interest in kind of doing it. Some guys, talking to some guys. I think Andy was probably the one I was really talking with the most, trying to get some stuff moved around. He was really open to it, but it just wasn't going to work, right? Then we go to Mater Dei, say, hey, we can't play that day. Can you play either one of these other days? And it just was kind of like a no. Like, no, we already have games. Like, we'll do it a different, like that was what it was. And, emailing back and forth, just trying to get that to happen. And had we not had the same thing not happened the year before, as far as, hey, we have a date, obviously we had another game, it was important for us to move it, right? It was very important for us to move it, so we did. Went to a strategic partner and told we can't play in your game that we already planned on, like literally planned on playing in a game. They decided not to. Maybe they felt like they didn't need to, so that's, the thing. And then you never know in the background of, hey, I don't know what happened. We didn't make it happen. We offered another date. They didn't take either one of the other dates, so now we're both stuck.
So you gave them 2 dates.
Yeah.
And they weren't willing to play on either date.
They already had games. Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so then that leads me to this question. So you're teeing it up for me to ask you questions now.
All right, gotcha.
Mater Dei's head coach at the Coliseum, they beat Bosco, and he basically references Bishop Gorman anytime, anywhere, come to Bristol. Okay, what's your thoughts on it after the fact that he didn't take either date to reschedule the game?
Yeah, I mean, I would say at first kind of a little, kind of weird because obviously, we can't play anything postseason, or if they can't play anything postseason, so it was kind of weird to have that whole thing. But then, at the end, it was kind of like, if you really look at it, the totality of it, it's like, man, that, like, you're in the middle of Coliseum, you just won this big game against, one of the best teams in the country, and all you're doing is talking about Bishop Gorman. Like, that's pretty good. Like, that lets us know, like, we're doing the right things, we're back on the map. Like, that's an important moment right there for you guys, but we're now interjecting that moment, so that kind of lets, if you weren't aware or didn't know we were back, like, that lets you know, like, we're back. So I thought that was, it was really pretty good, actually.
So, which Bristol are you going to play him at?
Yeah, I didn't know if it was the one in Connecticut for sports,
ESPN?
Yeah, ESPN or there. But yeah, I mean, obviously we've already set the date again next year, so we already have that. When we put our schedule out, we'll announce it. I hope we play on Bristol or whatever this Bristol thing is. I hope we play there. I know we usually play in Santa Ana in the Dome, but I mean, you know, it's just kind of one of those things. Again, it's a validation, which was awesome at the time to you know, everybody's like, oh man, they're talking so much junk. I was like, dude, they just won one of their biggest games they've just won all year, and all you're doing is talking about us. So obviously we're doing something right. So, you know, that's how I kind of took it, and that's how I look at it. And, you know, not for nothing, I don't know, you know, let's just be, you know, we're trying to make these, you know, we're trying to get this other game scheduled. Well, I don't know exactly when Frank was hired. Was he involved in that? Like, did he know it was going to miss it? You know, like, you never know those pieces, like how late, because they didn't hire him very quick either, right?
Right.
So you don't really know, like, you know, I just wish, as adamant as he was at the game, he would have been adamant when he found out that we weren't going to play. Like, hey, like, because that's how Rolo is. You know, Rolo would have been like, oh no, we're going to figure this out. And I think, just like we went and moved the game, I think if you go to somebody and you're just kind of common sensible, like, hey, you know, like, hey, this is what happened. You got two different people to talk to them. Like, hey, can we move this? This is like a national championship game. This wasn't just like a regular, hey, we're gonna like just play an offset school or nothing like that. I mean, that happened. I mean, it happens all the time. Like even same thing, going back for 2 years ago, Kahuku was supposed to come out here and play Liberty. Everybody knew that, and then they end up saying, you know, like contracts, all that stuff, Polynesian Bowl, all that, and they actually end up going to play Bosco. So those are things, again, at the time, Bosco was the #1 team in the nation. You know, they wanted to play for a national championship. Like, if you're going to do those things, you got to go, you know, if you get an opportunity to play against #1 team, #2, #3, like, yeah, you might have things in the works, but if that's what your goal is, like, you got to kind of be like, hey, go to people and be like, hey, this is what we're trying to do. You know, can we partner up again, or, you know, is this too detrimental? So, you know, it just kind of is what it is. You know, I've heard a lot of different people that don't really understand how it all kind of works. And then, you know, we were blessed and lucky to get Miami Central, which was the #2 team in the country at the time. Like, that was amazing because we were saving the date in case Mater Dei said yes. When they didn't say yes, I'd lost, you know, the other game that we were supposed to play that game. You know, like the whole schedule already set. So then when the realignment hit, you're moving games, you're trying to figure stuff out. We held that date open so we could play them. We were lucky. I mean, we didn't bank the Miami Central game till almost May. That's almost next. I mean, that's almost like you don't even have a game, right? So,
right.
You know, Coach Joseph down there, everything great. I mean, just glad that he was able to take the game, bring those guys up. I think he has an amazing program. Again, it's last year's national championship or undefeated team. They were ranked #5. It's not like we found, you know, school to death.
Well, no.
You know, like
final thought. Like you guys played 4 non-league games. Every one of those teams was ranked in the top 35 coming into the season. Mm-hmm. Some of them are still. I mean, a couple are ranked in the top 15, top 10 now. Yeah. It's a hell of a job with you and the program, Coach. Congratulations again on the national title. The G is back, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And that's it for this edition of the FSM Prep Rally. It's a special edition with Bishop Gorman, head coach Brent Browner. National champions. Make sure you follow the franchise on all social media. And remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel.